Greetings, everyone. This is Josh here with episode 14 of Horror Hangouts, and we have a special episode tonight as we will be discussing Stephen King, or at least some of the titles of Stephen King's. If we discussed every single one, we'd be here for 8 hours. But anyhow, so joining me once again, we have Alistair. How are you doing,
Greetings.
Alistair?
Doing well tonight. Doing well.
Excellent. And making her debut here at Horror Hangouts, we have Lucifer. How's it going, Lucy?
Doing good.
Doing good. And for those who don't know, Lucy's also an author. She's working on some writing there, but hopefully she'll have something out here sometime but before the decade's out, would you say?
Yeah, something actually by July in an anthology.
Oh,
Cool. Excellent. So anyhow, we know Stephen King is, often referred to as one of the premier master of horrors. His books and then the movies that the books have been based on. So what we're going to do, at least for this episode, we each pick two titles that we're going to discuss, and we're just going to kind of talk about each of us pick two. So we got 6 Stephen King titles we'll be discussing tonight. So we're just going to go ahead and get this started. So Alistair, what's one of the titles you've picked for tonight?
one of the titles I picked, and one I have been quickly binging because I haven't finished it, is the series Castle Rock. Have you all seen any of the episodes?
No, I haven't, but
I've seen some of the first couple episodes. I'm hard to get into television or episode television like that, but tell us your what's your impressions of it so far?
Well, I have to say the concept I absolutely adore, and I'm very sad that it only got to 2 seasons. When COVID hit, it kind of affected everything, and then afterwards they just canceled it. But with this one, it takes place in the fictional town of Castle Rock, Maine.
Okay.
Also, and that was also the city of Needful Things, Cujo, and the Dead Zone. The Strangler was the Castle Rock Strangler, and there's many King references have either taken place in this town or mentioned it.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
And episode 1, it's primarily takes place in Shawshank Prison, which is right next to the town. And the first season, it is each season is a new story. Now, season 1 only had one character from a previous Stephen King book, the sheriff from Needful Things, who had survived. He was
Alan Pangborn, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, season 2 had Annie Wilkes from Misery being the main character. Not only that, she was having to fight off an evil that had also rearisen from the Marsden house from Salem's Lot. And in season 2, it's a prequel to Misery. It primes her character perfectly for the next book. Like, Misery takes place after season 2, but and it just sets everything up. It was so wonderful.
Sounds like a good count. So basically, it's taking like existing Stephen King tales and just giving them a little bit more, I guess, more depth or more. What's the word I want to say? Just giving it another angle for those characters.
Yes, even season 1, one of the characters was related to Jack Torrance. It was actually his niece, and she did say, "Yeah, my uncle went to Colorado and went crazy, tried to kill his wife and kid."
Yeah, I was going to say also with that being Shawshank Prison, that also refers to another Stephen King movie or whatever, Shawshank Redemption too. So that's, yeah, I know Lavis. Well, he's from Maine, so it stands to reason most of his stories are based there.
Not only that, for season 2, they got Tim Robbins to come back, not as Andy Dufresne, but I believe he played the character Pop Cimarron from Sundogs.
Oh wow! Well, that's cool. You don't see Tim Robbins do a lot too much these days.
Acting wise, he was knocking this out of the park.
Oh, I bet he's a great actor.
And then I also have to give props to Lizzie Kaplan, who played young Annie Wilkes.
Mm-hmm.
Even like the body language she took from Kathy Bates from Misery, like kind of like the walk, like it's kind of like a little waddle, and all the phrases and stuff. It was incredible work.
Excellent. Okay. Well, so that's something. And see, that's being shown on. Isn't that on Netflix? I think
It's on Hulu right now. I don't know
it's
if
on
Netflix has
Hulu.
it. No, but incredible concept, and I am sad like we won't get to see where the story was going to go.
Yeah, because there's so many different things they could have done with that. You could have done. Well, it's almost like what they're doing with. And we'll be talking a little bit about it later, but they're going to be doing this almost a prequel called Welcome to Derry, I think, that's going to be coming out on Max sometime later this year, I think, or early next year. So it sounds like those are things they could have done. They could do a story. Wouldn't it be cool if they did a story like a prequel to Christine showing the first owner of that car?
Oh, that'd be great.
You did see it drive by in one of the episodes in season 2.
Oh wow!
And oh my gosh, I completely left out. Also, some of the other guest stars you had, Bill Skarsgård, and was it not Bill? Yeah. It was Bill Skarsgård was the main villain in season 1 of Castle Rock. You also had Sissy Spacek come back for season 1, once again playing a different character, but it's also getting these previous actors, and they even got John Cusack's sister to play the warden in Shawshank in season 1.
Oh, really, Joan Cusack?
Not Joan Cusack. Apparently, there's another sister.
Oh, I didn't know there's another sister.
Neither did I.
I think John Cusack just had a birthday too.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw it yesterday. I think it's now
58.
58. Yeah. I hope I look that good when I'm 58. Okay, so Lucy, tell us about one of your picks tonight.
Cycle of the Werewolf. It's kind of underrated, I think. I mean, the movie Silver Bullet was pretty good. The adaptation.
Okay, so that was See, I've never read the book. I've only seen the movie. So, tell us about the first time you read the book. Then
it's a book you could probably read in 2 hours. It's a short novella.
Mm-hmm.
It goes by the month. It doesn't quite go by like the movie at all. So you start with January, and he goes out, like in the movie, he goes and kills Arnie,
right,
at the tracks. That's not how it goes in the book. This Arnie is actually out in the woods, hunkered down during a winter storm, and he hears scratching at the door, followed by growling, and then the beast comes in. And then they go into February, and that is the woman who was pregnant in the movie got killed. But in this one, she's a virgin. She's very unattractive. Nobody wants her type. And it's Valentine's Day, and the beast comes in. She thinks it's just a figment of her imagination, and it's very weird. It's interesting. The boy finally comes in a bit, I think, during the 4th of July.
Okay.
That's where he kills it. Or not, he doesn't kill it, sorry. It shoots it in the eye.
That's right.
But, yeah, it's a good read. I would definitely go for that. Like I said, it is a short novella. And it does not go by the movie. Just don't go by the movie.
Okay.
With
So
that.
with this one, with the book, it's pretty much going through over the course of almost an entire year, where the movies is more condensed, where it seems like everything's happening within maybe a week, a few days to a week, basically.
Well, yeah, like the graveyard scene, they didn't
Mhm.
do that in the book. I was kind of disappointed because that was pretty good. Or I don't think it was a graveyard, but where they were going in at night and they're looking for it in the fog and comes up from the fog and
Yeah, that one lady like mocks her husband because
you're not gonna make lemonade in your pants, are you?
yeah,
No.
that funny scene. I always liked the movie. Was there still like in the book, and I forget all these characters' names sometimes, but the boy, he had a sister. Was she still there in the book, and they still have like that typical sibling butting
Yep.
heads type of relationship, I guess?
Uncle Red.
That would be my next question. As was he as crazy in the book as Gary Busey played him in the movie?
No, which was disappointing, I thought.
No one is as crazy as Gary Busey.
Yeah, no
Oh,
one could,
yeah,
not
not
even
even his
Gary.
kid Jake.
No. Forgot about that. Yeah, I guess it's so I suppose that would be the one thing about the movie that makes it better than the book is just the portrayal of Uncle Red in that. But when you got Gary Busey, what do you expect?
Yeah, they don't even go into how he became one. He just went into a graveyard and he was putting flowers there or something, and everything around him kind of died. And what would happen around a werewolf or in their human form is things would die.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he was short, very nerdy looking. It's nothing you'd expect, like in the movie.
Yeah, in the movie, he's kind of
Very good looking.
okay. I was going to ask you because I wouldn't know, but I would say, yeah, probably, he kind of built a little bit there.
Yep. Like I said, it's very different from the movies, so that's what I really liked about it.
Go ahead, Alistair.
I mean, not all changes from the books are bad. I mean, The Shining, there's a lot of differences there, but that was an incredible movie.
Oh, yeah. I don't like staying at hotels.
Well, I love it.
Depends on the hotel. If the floors are sticky, it doesn't matter. How cheap it is.
If there's if it has one of those old vibrating beds there where you stick a quarter in there, that might be one you might not want to stay at either.
Nope.
Ooh, if they have a good gym, though, that is nice. That is always nice.
I always look for ones that have a good free breakfast in the morning.
Yes, that too.
Well, speaking of, I'm trying to think what else to talk about with Silver Bullet. I think the thing that I always liked about it as a kid is because I'm like the oldest of three and I have siblings, having that play out there between these two, this brother and sister. At first, they're practically at each other's throats, and when shit hits the fan, they kind of come together there and do what most siblings do for the most part. And of course, Gary Busey is Gary Busey.
No matter what. Jesus Palomino. I love how he does that.
I know. Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to think how long ago it's been. I'll have to read the book. I haven't read the book version of that. But it's been about a year or so since I last saw the movie, so might be another time to revisit here in a little bit. What did you think of the movie, Alistair, and have you read the book?
Silver Bullet?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've only seen parts of the movie. I haven't read the book.
Okay.
But what I did say the movie was really fun. What was it you had? What was it? One of the Coreys. Was it Haim?
Yeah, it was Corey Haim.
I remember a show called Big Wolf on Campus. The main characters would always argue, and they would just yell, "Hey, Feldman! Hey, Feldman!" Try to see what a superior Corey was. But no, I mean the parts I've seen, that was a fun flick.
That might have been his first. I could be wrong, but see, that movie came out in '85, so I'm thinking that might have been his first movie. I could be wrong on that one, but that's like the first I can think of him, because that's before Lost Boys. That's before. Let's see, he was in
License to
another
Drive.
License to Drive, but there's another Stephen King adaptation I was thinking he was in, and now I'm blanking on it. Wasn't he in Stand By Me, or was
No.
that Feldman?
Nope.
I'm getting them confused.
I forgot the kids from Stand By Me were also in season 2. For real quick.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, that's something that definitely needs to be checked out there, and that's the book should be checked out too there, because I'd be curious. Cause basically, there's a lot more detail, and it's probably typical Stephen King fashion. He's playing this out over the course of a much longer time than a mere, like I said, I think the movie seems like it takes place over the course of a few days or so, maybe a week tops. And I'm probably butchering that, but speaking of books that are entirely different from the movie, and this is one I kind of did a last minute change. I decided one of the stories, I was going to do Needful Things, but I might do that on a future episode instead. But I've decided to talk about The Running Man, which is not an obvious Stephen King pick because he wrote that under a pseudonym, Richard Bachman. But I wanted to talk about that because that was actually the first Stephen King book I actually ever read while I was in high school. And it's also interesting, I had just seen a video on YouTube stating they might be doing a remake of the movie, in which case it's going to be more, because the book is way different from the movie. And it's supposed to be more true to the book. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. So I thought I'd bring that up. The movie, of course, starred Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the great came out in late '87. Had a good cast, of course, Richard Dawson, who's most known for being in the old show Hogan's Heroes, if you remember that show, but also the original host of Family Feud. So he was almost tailor-made for that role. And basically, the only thing the movie and the book have in common is the main character's name, which is Ben Richards, and the fact that there's this game called The Running Man where you have to survive basically being hunted. And if you survive for a certain amount of time, you win the big grand prize money. That's about where they divert then, because in the movie, Schwarzenegger's character, Ben Richards, he's basically a former military guy who refused to shoot innocent civilians. Well, of course, they imprison him and blame him for the deaths of all these people that he didn't commit. He ends up breaking out, joins the resistance, gets caught again, and then he is forced to participate in the game. In the book, he is basically this out of work. He's out of work, can't find any work. He's married. He has a young baby who has health issues. So he volunteers for the game in order to win money for his family. And the Richard Dawson character which is his character's name's Killian. In the book, he's just merely the executive producer. He's not both the producer and the host. So they obviously combined those characters together in the movie. And of course, the book is, of course, a lot, the movie, of course, is an action packed. It's paced pretty well. And Schwarzenegger wins at the end. The book is much slower. It's more darker. He ends up, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it, his wife and kid basically ends up dying. So there's a point towards the end of the book where he basically is flying a helicopter and basically goes straight into the building, taking everyone out with him. So it has a much darker ending. Both endings kind of help with getting a revolution started, because they both are set in a dystopian type of future. So saying all that, I'm curious to see what they do if they do a remake, and if it's supposed to be more true to the book. I can't see it being as entertaining as the actual movie. So I think it's more likely they do break it down into maybe a mini series, perhaps, kind of like they did when they did the Shining mini series back in the 90s. I'm wondering if they'll do something like that. So anyhow, that's my, I always enjoyed the movie. I actually read the book before I saw the movie. So I was obviously.
Did it piss you off?
No, not really. You can't even really compare the two because they're just so different. It's almost unfair to even compare the book with. To me, they're just two totally different stories with a slightly similar premise to it, but they're not very similar at all. So it's like I can enjoy the movie for what it is, an Arnold Schwarzenegger late 80s action-packed movie, and the book a more methodical, dark, dystopian tale of fiction, really. I don't know if any of you have read the book, but I assume maybe you both have seen the movie.
Actually, I haven't.
Seen chunks of the movie, but not
really.
The whole thing.
Well, try to think who else is in the movie. Jesse Ventura has a small part. This was right after he had done Predator with Arnold, and so he was in there. The late great Jim Brown was in there. He plays one of these gladiator hunters. He's in there. He has a small part in there. Even Mick Fleetwood, of all people, Fleetwood Mac, is in this movie along with. So you've got a little bit of everyone. I can't remember who directed that movie, but I know Stephen King wasn't very happy with it. Probably much like because of Shining, it was deviated so much from the original, the book itself. But it'll be interesting to see. I really enjoyed the movie. I liked the book, and maybe I'm, like I said, it was the first Stephen King book. It's not a very long read. I think it's about, I don't know, it seemed to me about 300 or 400 pages, maybe somewhere in that range. So it wasn't. Not quite a novella, but not a full-blown 1,000-page novel like he normally writes.
Now you probably knocked that out in like a weekend.
Probably. I probably did when I read it back in. I think I read it. Our teacher, and it was I think it was my freshman year in high school. His teacher was like, "Well, you pick whatever book you want for your book report. I don't care." I'm like, "Okay." So I picked that one up and did it, and. Like I said, that was my first.
Pet Cemetery.
What was that?
I said I did that in school with Pet Cemetery.
Oh, wow.
Glorious.
I hadn't read that one until later in life, but
that's one of the benefits of being a book lover and having to do anything school related involving books you've already read.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King's the reason I got into writing. He was my inspiration other than Poe.
Do you do the 1 page a day?
I wish. I've got such brain fog right now. It's not even funny.
At the time I knocked out my short book, I was doing not a page, but one scene. It kind of helped with the flow. And then after I was done, I'd go back, edit a little bit, but it helped. Like a little consistency helps. But I'm kind of there's one story I'm writing I'm kind of stuck on right now. I kind of don't know how to move it along.
I've been doing about a sentence or two a day.
That is better than nothing.
I had met recently, it was just a few weeks ago. I was in Dallas at Fan Expo down there, and I was talking. There was a couple of writers who had like their own little, like almost like I wouldn't say a workshop, but they were kind of had like their own little panel discussion. All these writers are from the Northeast, and they had talked about something that they do called a 30-minute sprint, where they will just write for 30 minutes straight on whatever story it happens to be, and then stop after that 30 minutes. And then, of course, they need to go back and do whatever editing or changing they will, but just in the interest of getting in the habit of just writing something down when you're like in the middle of writing a story. And I kind of, because I was like kind of struggling a little bit at times write my last story plus the short story I just wrote. And so what I did is maybe I didn't do 30 minutes, but I did like 2 20-minute sprints, writing sprints, where I do 20 minutes, take a 20-minute break, and then do 20 more minutes. And that seemed to work out pretty well. So that might be something you might try. Just set your timer on your phone, or if you have those old like food cooking timers that you used to wind up. And
let me see. A strange inspiration I use. It's I'll play some surf rock, and then I'll read science articles. And sometime there was one time I was stuck on a story, and I read an article, and I thought I can not only put that in there, but also that gets me to bring in another character I brought in before and bring them into this story. So just a little inspiration here and there.
Cool.
Yeah, with me too, another thing I sometimes will watch a movie. Sometimes if I'm getting stuck on something.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, since this latest book I wrote is pretty much it's an erotic vampire story. So sometimes if I felt like I was getting stuck or just couldn't get in the mood, I would sit back and watch one of those early 70s Hammer horror vampire films like Vampire Lovers or Lust for the Vampire or something like that, just to kind of if anything, just to get my juices flowing again. And, as far as writing goes, I can't really say exactly one person that got me into inspire me. It's just a whole bunch of them, from King to Barker to Mary Shelley to Poe to hell, even someone like who's not even horror, but now I'm blanking on his name. How can I do that? Johnny Depp played him in a movie.
Oh, Hunter S. Thompson.
Hunter S. Thompson, yes. Maybe one of my favorite writers, but not quite horror, though. You could say he wrote about some horrific things, especially in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, when you see people walking around that look like lizards because you did too much ether.
One of my favorite comic books, the main character is based off of him, but it takes place in the future and all kinds of drugs and
Doonesbury
firearms.
I was going to say, were you talking about Doonesbury?
No. The Transmetropolitan.
Okay. I know the comic strip Doonesbury, there's a character that's somewhat patterned after this pseudonym that Hunter S. Thompson would play, known as Raoul Duke. And he more or less played a parody of himself, or that's how it came across. But I don't even know if that comic strip's even still around. I haven't bought a newspaper in 10 years, so.
Me either.
But anyhow, we each got another movie to go to. So Alistair, what was another title you wanted to talk about?
This second movie, it's the only one where I've read the book, the movie, and the TV series. And of course, I'm talking about Dead Zone. After Johnny Smith is in a car accident, he wakes up from a coma 6 years later with psychic abilities. And I have to tell you, this is one of the stories that really benefited from being formatted to a TV show. It gave it room to breathe. And actually, it even changed how the story evolved, because in both the movie and the book, the further it went on, the more and more isolated Johnny Smith would get. He would stay away from people because he didn't want visions. His former fiance was married, and in the show, there was an episode where there's a character by the name of Bruce. He's his physical therapist, and it is and there was an episode in season 2 that showed if he had never met Bruce, then the events of the book and the film would have happened exactly as is. Like it would have ended with him on top of the sniper rifle trying to kill Greg Stilson, bringer of the nuclear apocalypse. And so that was fascinating because it means the ending could be different than where it was previously showed it was going. But unfortunately, unfortunately, with the each season, the ratings would go lower and lower, and it was an expensive show, so it was canceled before they were able to get their last season.
The one with Michael C. Hall?
Yes.
Anthony Hall. Was it Anthony? It was the last name of Hall, but
Anthony
I don't
Michael
know.
Hall.
Thank you.
Yeah, Anthony. Yeah, we know. Yeah, he was in. He played the first Rusty in Vacation, and in Breakfast Club.
Yep.
And I have to tell you, the show did have fun with his powers. There was an episode where there were astronauts that had an accident in space, and all their communication was cut off. And so Greg Stilson, the evil politician, he brought in the NASA experts to Johnny, and he was able to use his visions to set up a form of communication between the astronauts and NASA. And he would also have his visions just show him floating in mid-space. It was
Sounds creepy.
it was definitely fun. And there was another one. He had to get two scientists who had used to date. He had to get them back together to make an invention to save lives. The thing is, though, that's when his powers decided to just like, no, not going to make this easy on you. The male scientist was like, what do I say to her? And he grabbed the glass she had, and he was like, okay, you go there and you say this and this. Go. And one of his friends says, you really saw that? And he was like, no, but I found out our dishwasher is gay.
How do you think the show compared to the movie?
Yes, the movie. Oh my God! Like Christopher Walken and Martin Sheen, just acting powerhouses, man. They both did an incredible job in that. And also his first official case in both, stopping the Castle Rock Strangler.
That's right. Another throwback to the Castle Rock show.
They did mention it in the show. One of the characters said, there was a strangler who lived in my house, and I'm fine. It's like every house has had like a murder or something in that town.
And also the movie was directed by David Cronenberg. So once again, another legendary horror director. You know, we've had Carpenter, we've had Cronenberg,
Kubrick.
De Palma, Kubrick. Yeah, they've all taken their turns, you know, directing Stephen King films.
Mike Flanagan as well, who's also, they gave him The Dark Tower.
Yes, we've heard about that. That should be interesting too, to see what he does with that. And what else? He's also got assigned to another
The Exorcist.
movie. That's right. He's going to try to breathe life back into that one, but we'll see. I'm just not as married to that franchise. I mean, I like the first movie. I think because I'm not big into religious horror to begin with. Probably because I grew up Catholic, so I heard enough of this nonsense as a kid. I don't want to see a whole trilogy of movies about it. So maybe if they did it instead of having a Catholic priest do it, if they had like a Jewish rabbi, you know.
Oh, that would be weird.
Now, I know, but it'd be fun. It'd be
different. Be. Yep.
I mean, because it's all these exorcist movies are all the same thing. Well, okay, you're possessed by a demon. Let's get a Catholic priest or a cardinal or whatever, and we have a bunch of crazy shit happen. The demon goes, all is well. And, you know, it's just kind of this. That's why I can't get too big into those movies sometimes.
I do have two recommendations for you because I'm the same, but when it's done well, it is done well.
Okay.
I do recommend season 1 of The Exorcist show.
Okay.
That one, it expands upon it. It has callbacks to the original. Like the first movie happened in this universe. Oh, and the last few episodes have so many scenes that are just, it's incredible. That's all I can say without spoiling anything.
Okay.
As for a movie, you have to track this down. It's a movie called Ava's Possessions. This one, it takes place after the exorcism is done. And
Okay.
it's about the victim trying to rebuild her life and also try to solve a mystery because she finds out while she was possessed, someone had been hired to kill her. And so the movie was originally going to be a show, but it wasn't approved, so they took all the storylines
Uh-huh.
and made it a movie. So it's like you have almost a whole season's worth of story packed into one movie.
Nice. Is it which streaming is it on?
And I see that's the thing. It is tough to track down.
Oh, okay.
It's more light in here.
Yeah, I didn't even know they made The Exorcist into a TV show.
I really recommend it. I still need to see season 2 because I've been told it's even better than season 1. And they also have John Cho in there as well.
Oh, I like him.
There's a movie out, and it's probably a fairly cheap movie that might, I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's called The Exorcists. Plural.
Is that the Russell Crowe one that just came out?
No, and maybe I'm confusing that was it. I know the one he's doing is like a sequel to the one he did last year. I know there's another one, and I'll have to double check but there's one with Doug Bradley. We were just talking about him earlier before we started recording, where he plays an exorcist. I'll watch that just because he's in it. Whether it's good or not, I don't know.
Yeah, he is.
Like,
I like Doug.
But like my favorite possession movie is a movie called Possession, and it has nothing to do with your typical possession or exorcism tropes. It's just so that movie is so bizarre it's hard to even describe it.
And then there's Possessor.
I haven't seen that one.
It is both like meditative, like in slow and pace, cut in with extreme quick flashes of extreme violence.
Okay.
Pacing wise, it reminds me of Prisoners of Ghostland. I don't know if you've ever seen that one with Nicolas Cage.
I haven't seen it, but I heard of it, and I heard it's good.
I haven't seen it. Of course, Nicolas Cage movies all kind of blend together with me, so I may have seen it, just didn't know what it was called.
I'm surprised Nicolas Cage has never done anything Stephen King related.
I know, right?
He seems perfect.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm trying to think he would be good. I'm trying to think what character
Crimson King
in a King movie that he would have been good in.
Jack Torrance isn't. That's what comes to mind.
Don't even. Oh, I'm now sad we don't ever get to see that.
I know. It just came to mind. I was like, Jack Torrance. Oh man, he would be perfect with that, with those eyes. Yeah, he's got that crazy look.
Probably would have been a good choice to have played the dad in Pet Sematary. Because let's face it, in the movie, the guy who plays the dad is really kind of very wooden. I mean, it's a great movie, but his performance is really blah. Nicolas Cage would have probably brought some more depth to that character, I think.
Pizzazz. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you really don't care about him. You're kind of rooting that he ends up getting killed or whatever. You feel bad when Fred Gwynn dies, of course, because he's Fred Gwynn, but I don't even remember the actor's name who played the dad in that.
The kid, though, the actor who played the kid, Nico Hughes, he was him. You met him?
Yeah, my wife got his autograph because she collects the Funko Pops, so she had one of Gage. And she was at the Days of the Dead we went to a few months ago and got his autograph. Pretty nice guy, probably a little bit younger than me. So he's probably, God, by now he'd be in his 40s for sure.
I don't know if you've seen Dylan's New Nightmare. It's a fan film that's a sequel to Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
I've heard about it. I've heard about it. I haven't seen it yet.
Now, I do recommend it.
Dylan's Nightmare. Nice. And creepy. I like that.
Yeah, it's probably up on YouTube, isn't it? You could probably find it there.
Oh yeah, I love that. The movie starts with him. He plays like the same character, but he became an actor, and he was auditioning for a Hatchet 5.
Oh, that's awesome. So they're talking about it's a Nightmare on Elm Street, universe movie, but we're going to also mention the Hatchet universe and combine that, and that's kind of cool, especially since Robert Englund has a small part in the very first Hatchet.
I mean, also, I really want the Hatchet series to cross over with Terrifier, because they do know him and Damien Leone do know each other.
We talked about that too last month, I remember, or either that or last week when we were talking on that random thing. But yeah, that would be it. Victor Crowley versus Art the Clown. That would be epic. But speaking about possession, here's one type of possession movie that I really like is when a car is possessed. So, Lucy, why don't you talk about your next title you were going to talk about?
Christine?
Yep, I think that was it. Now, there's my favorite possession movie.
Yes. It's other than Christine, I mean, what other movies have you seen with a possessed car? I mean, there's the car, but that was wasn't that a demonic car?
Well, there's Maximum Overdrive, where everything gets
the aliens.
Yeah, they're kind of possessed too, especially another Stephen King coke-induced, binged, directed movie.
I am making a statement. It is a masterpiece.
Oh, it is.
The perfect blend of cinema and rock music.
Oh God, yeah.
If I was binging on cocaine, I could not do a better job than what Stephen King did on that movie, for sure.
That is something I hope to see.
Yeah, Christine. Oh man, I think it was 1985 when I actually first saw it because it came out in '83. And for some ungodly reason, I had a huge crush on Keith Gordon, who plays Arnie. So, but yes.
I like that. You have very low standards, don't you?
I'm not. I go by how they treat me. I don't go by looks, actually.
There you go. Good girl. Well, he didn't exactly treat his girlfriend very good in that movie.
No, he did not. But real life Keith Gordon, he's such a sweetheart. So
yeah, he's strictly a director nowadays.
A director, yes. I've seen quite a few of his movies. He did one called The Singing Detective with Robert Downey Jr. He was in that.
Oh.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's a kind of a musical.
He was also in. I was going to say he was also in Jaws 2.
Oh, yes, he was. Keith Gordon.
And he got eaten. I think he did. Yeah, he got killed in that one.
I don't remember. I've only seen Jaws 2 a handful of times, like a long time ago.
Yeah. He had the greased up backed hair and
the mutton chops or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Sideburns, mutton chops, I don't know.
That series was rich in hair. I will say that.
But yeah, back to Christine. Your first time.
Christine. I really do wish they'd do what you said. Go back. And then in the book, they kind of do describe the first owner. You know, how the car killed his daughter or the wife. And the owner was the one, wasn't he the one whispering in Arnie's ear most of the time? In the passenger seat. I mean, I've only read the book once. Which is weird.
But, I don't recall that.
Because
I
he also
think
had to
so.
get the back brace and everything.
Right. Well, that was the owner's brother
Yeah.
that they
Arnie
buy the
also ended
car
up
from.
getting. Oh.
Right. That Arnie bought the car from. It was that was the brother of the guy who originally owned it, and he's the one that has the famous line, "Well, smell of a good car, nothing better except maybe smell of pussy." I think was the line from him.
Yeah, the guy who kept saying shitters. Like I said, I
Yeah.
only read the book once, seen the movie quite a few. But the book is way different, though, from what I remember. There's especially how Darnell dies. That was pretty cool. If you remember, have you read the book?
A long time ago. It might have been the second or third Stephen King. Right, sometime in about the mid 90s or so. I do remember the book being a lot more detailed, a lot more graphic. And
Yeah.
yes, they do have a lot more of the backstory as
Right.
to the original owner. That's why I'm saying, I sometimes I've heard rumors that they're going to do a remake of Christine. Like, no, if you're going to want to do Christine, do the backstory. You could,
Right.
A
maybe
prequel.
John Carpenter will come back for one more movie, and that could be the bookend to his career, is
Oh,
to
like
finish off doing the prequel to Christine rather than The Ward.
I mean, they did just do a prequel for Pet Cemetery. Why not keep going?
And like we
Bloodlines.
were saying earlier, they're doing the same thing with it, doing the Welcome to Derry series that they're going to do. So maybe
Yeah.
that's the way to go rather than just remaking something that's already a classic.
Yeah, Darnell dies because the car rams into his house, and the hood opens, and he gets knocked in there, and like the fan blades or something. And I was like, damn, why didn't they do that in the movie
Yeah, no kidding. I would have.
instead of choke him or whatever? That would have been a hell of a lot better. But the movie, I love the movie.
Yeah, movies. I mean, take a Stephen King book and then you have John Carpenter direct it and obviously adapt it to the screenplay. Plus, with his score, with those little stings that he does, I can't do it, but that ding, he did it quite a bit in Halloween as well with his music with whatever he does on his keyboard, and yeah, it was a damn good movie. Just kind of, I guess it's kind of like you can almost look at Christine as a metaphor for what happens when you get too attached to anything, really. And in this case, he gets almost like a drug addict, only he's addicted to his car rather than cocaine or whatever, or a sex addict or whatever. Because Christine becomes almost a substitute for sex. Like he almost gets turned on by Christine when she when he says show me, and the car rebuilds itself basically in front of him.
And at the very end, when he dies, he's just lightly touching the car, almost an intimate touch. And then she gets pissed.
Yeah. Well, she almost choked the hell out of his girlfriend, or almost died choking on popcorn or something along those lines.
Hamburger, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that actress there, I think she was on, what else did she go on? I think she was on Baywatch.
Don't remember.
Alexandra Paul. That was the name of the actress, but I know she was on Baywatch, and I did a few other movies I'm probably blanking on, but
She got a twin sister.
Yeah, I think so.
And
then the guy who plays Arnie's friend in the movie, I think he went on to become a director as well.
Stockwell, John Stockwell.
Mm-hmm. I have to look that up. See what. I think what other big movie that Keith Gordon directed.
There's Chocolate War. There's Mother Night. That's got Nick Nolte in it. It's kind of like a Nazi thing.
Oh, no, I've never seen that movie, but I remember seeing like going in the video store and seeing the cutouts for that or whatever you would. Those of us who remember going into the Blockbuster or any other video, I remember seeing that, and I just never saw that movie.
Oh, I miss video stores.
He was also in Dress to Kill. He was like young, but
Yeah, she would have
it
been
had
really young for that.
Michael Caine in it as a crossdresser.
Had another one that just celebrated a birthday. Nancy Allen, who was in the lead in that, I think, Dress to Kill, but also known for being in RoboCop and what was some other thing she was in?
Carrie too, right?
Yep, she
Yeah.
was.
She was in Carrie.
Yeah.
She was in this war comedy. I don't know if you guys remember, called 1941. It was actually directed by Spielberg. It had John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, all kinds of different actors in it. It was just Christopher Lee was in it. He had a small part in it. It had everyone in it. Kind of a goofy World War II comedy. But yeah, she was in that too.
It's funny because I actually wrote to Stephen King around 2012 because I came up with an idea for a possessed car. But I was like, no, I can't do that without permission. And so I sent an email to him, and it wound up being his, what's her name, Marsha? Was the agent or something that sent something to me back saying, as long as it has nothing to do with his characters, yada, 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 go ahead with a possessed car. Who cares? It's like, awesome. So.
I thought you were saying, hey, I have a really good idea. Imagine a possessed car.
Want to try that idea? Sorry, I did that 40 years ago.
Yep. Yeah. But I was just like,
that's cool. You got a response.
What was that?
That's cool. You got a response. They actually responded to you. I mean, not him per se, but his whatever representative.
Yeah, Marsha. I don't know why I remember her name, but Marsha.
Cool. Well, let's see here. So yeah, Christine. Another cool thing. A movie's always made better when Henry Dean Stanton is in it.
Oh God, yeah. As the cop.
It just plays the same type of character. Everybody's just this very dry, dull-looking person that just brings something to the movie in one way or another, whether it's Alien or Christine or anything else I've seen him in. There used to be I watched it. I remember I had this one book of movie reviews, and I forget who even did them, but there's like these little symbols. That's what's in the movie, like, whatever, gore, might have a symbol for gore or a symbol for nudity or whatever. And then there was like a special, like a little face drawing and said, this symbol means that Harry Dean Stanton is in the movie.
Awesome.
It was probably written by some stoners or something.
Wild at Heart would have pretty much every symbol that would be possible. You got the Harry Dean Stanton, nudity, a bunch of violence, David Lynch,
coarse language, whatever.
Nicolas Cage.
Yes. This movie contains Nicolas Cage, so yeah, that's something to be aware of. Okay, well, the next movie, one I'll talk about, and this is my book. I've read the book, and of course, I've seen both the miniseries and the most recent movie, and that would be It, which It Chapter 1 is probably my favorite Stephen King adaptation as far as movies go, which is saying something since it's a fairly recent movie, and half the movies that come out nowadays I don't really care for, but this one really nailed it. Like most people, I was a fan of the miniseries, but I don't think it's aged well. It's kind of corny a little bit, let's be honest. Act 2 is really Pennywise being And don't get me wrong, I love Tim Curry to death, and he did the best he could do with that, given the fact that it was a made for network television series. But he did come across by the second act with the adult, where you have the adult versions of the Losers Club, does come across a little bit like a stand-up comedian, kind of like what Freddy became in the later Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. But I thought Skarsgård was overall a more frightening Pennywise. And I might get some hate for that because I'm saying I'm basically preferring his performance.
No, actually, I agree with you.
He just looks fright. I mean, he just looks a lot more frightening. He's more menacing. I don't jump very much in movies when I'm watching movies, especially in the theater. But there was at least 2 scenes in that first movie, especially when they're in their garage, when they got that projector scene going and he slowly emerges. Yeah, I jumped out of my seat a little bit during that, and that does not happen very often, if ever. The book really was, I think, really good. Kind of a its time too when you think about it. You know, the opening scene in It Chapter 2, you have that where they're at the fair and that gay couple basically becomes the victims of a hate crime. When you think about when Stephen King wrote that, which would have been what, that book came out in 88, 89, I think. That's pretty touchy subject to be writing about back in the late 80s. Nowadays, it'd probably be a little bit more, but hence why that probably did not appear in the miniseries. So something King, I think, is very good at. No matter, his best stories are the ones that have the best relatable characters, and I think it, for everyone that watches that, will relate, especially when we think back to when we were kids. And I think that's why the movie works better for me, because the kid portion takes place in 1989. Well, 1989, I was 15 years old, so I can relate to that better versus in the miniseries where they're in like the late 1950s, early 60s, something like that. Our parents would probably relate more to. But as far as It Chapter 2 goes, it's obviously not as good as the first one. It's a little bit too long. There probably wasn't a need to have those scenes where they discover their old playhouse. Well, that wasn't even mentioned in the first chapter. So why are we mentioning now in the second movie? But a couple of changes they made in that movie versus the book and the miniseries. I like the fact that they didn't, in the book, both Beverly and Bill's spouses show up into town. And in the miniseries, it's just Bill's wife that shows up. I'm glad they didn't do that in the movie, because I always felt that in the book and in the miniseries, that kind of distracts from the main story anyway, because the whole point is the grown-up Losers Club confronting Pennywise one time, and by bringing in outside people, you're just distracting from the story. So I think that was good that they left that out in Chapter 2. Also, I like the fact that they changed the fact that in the book of the miniseries, Mike, who's the one that stays behind the whole time, he gets injured and basically sidelined in the hospital and doesn't even participate in the last part of the story. So I'm glad they changed that too, to where he's a part of that final, as ridiculous as it got, because they just kind of like bullied him and he shriveled up. But still, I'm glad he was in part of that last act. But overall, at least with Chapter 2, I will defend it, at least in this regards. The performances across the board by all the adult actors everyone did a terrific job, as did the kids did in the It Chapter 1. So that's kind of my piece on it. I give like It Chapter 1 a 10 out of 10, and probably Chapter 2 I give like a 7.5 out of 10, because it's kind of like the running joke in the movie that everyone hates Stephen King's endings, and even Stephen King mocks himself at that one point where in the pawn shop, because I didn't like the ending. And that's just a tough ending to try and replicate and make good in the movie form. So there's my piece. What were your guys' thoughts on it, either the book, miniseries, or the movie?
Oh, I love 1990. That version was good. It was comical because Tim Curry and but yeah, you're right on the second one being just creepy, scared. I don't get scared often, but there were a couple jump scares. The book, very long, very, very descriptive. I have to bypass a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
I
am
don't like doing that, but I
It's
just
a
I
tough
am
read. It is. I mean, the story itself is really good, and his writing of the characters is great, but there's almost too much stuff in it. I think sometimes King gets a little sidetracked and maybe needs to stay more focused with his stories sometimes. But
right, because he was talking about a lot of pregnant stuff, like the water just grew pregnant. I was like, okay, great description. I would never have thought about it, but and then the spider. This would have been cool in the movie. In the book, they were in that alternate space or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and there was all these eggs that they had to stomp on. It's eggs or whatever. That would have been so cool to see in the movie. I mean, a bunch of little its sprouting. I mean, and then them having to stomp on them. I mean, that would have been really cool.
It would have been better than what they did in both the movie and the miniseries. My God, that guy, I mean, you can't fault them. I mean, they only had so much money for a budget. It's a miniseries, but God, that thing looked awful. They're like,
Yeah. Well, I don't. Depending on the first spider or the second spider, I mean, it was crab legs pretty much with it on top. I don't know which would have been better.
that was another problem too with the second ones. They probably went too heavy on the CGI on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whereas they focused more on practical effects. I mean, there was some CGI, but you don't really notice it. But yeah, they probably went a little bit too heavy with it. But I guess they determined, well, last time in the miniseries, an animatronic spider didn't work particularly well. Let's do this instead.
I am happy in both adaptations they kept out the orgy scene.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
yes, that
yeah,
was disturbing.
But
I'm not sure where King was going with that in the book, and I'm glad you mentioned it because one of us was going is things like you see a turd in the punch bowl, you want to ignore it, but you have to mention it, and that's the turd in
Yeah.
the punch bowl.
yeah, listen, if you and me fight, if we all fight off a demonic entity, that bonds us. That is plenty of bonding experience. Well, we don't need more.
No, no,
Probably
that's
not, and you have to feel bad for Beverly because she had to been hurting for a few weeks.
just wow. Yeesh. Yep. I'm glad they left that out.
Yeah, I don't. There's no way you could possibly put that.
I think a lot of people would have walked out if they would have saw that.
Yeah, especially at that age, because we're dealing with, of course, 12, 13,
Um,
14-year-olds. Yeah, that just wasn't going to work. Not
and
sure.
was Stephen King in the first adaptation? Because I know he was in the second, in the bike store or that store. But I
I
don't.
don't think he was in the miniseries. I can't
he
recall. I'm
he
pretty
was
sure
not.
he wasn't.
I've rewatched it a lot of times. He was not.
Okay.
I do know that it was the miniseries was directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who had also directed Halloween 3 Season of the Witch,
Ooh.
and had worked on Halloween's 1 and 2 as well under John. It's kind of like a John Carpenter understudy kind of, and he got the reins to do Halloween 3, and a few years later he gets to do the It miniseries.
Have you seen the Pennywise documentary?
No.
I think so. There's so many documentaries out there. I think it mainly focused on the miniseries, didn't it?
Yes. It
Yes.
was originally George Romero who was tapped to do the adaptation.
That's right.
And when they said, and he was like, yeah, we're going to do 8 hours. It's going to be a lot of violence. And when they came back and said, can we do 4 hours and not as much violence? He was just like, I tap out.
Yeah.
I would too. I mean, it was good, but it could, you'd like to see where it could have gone.
I'm wondering if they shouldn't have had, and granted, at this time with cable, I mean, you really, because this was 1990, so really, I'm wondering if you couldn't have done, if they hadn't done, like, say, a made for eight, because I think by that time HBO was doing some of their own movies and their own shows, maybe not yet, but that could have been like really the one they should have done, is maybe had that as a made for HBO miniseries, and then they would have been allowed to do a lot more things, excluding, of course, the orgy scene.
Wasn't there an 8-hour series that he did? I thought no, The Stand was only 4. Never mind.
Well, The Stand, that was like 8 episodes, wasn't it?
That's what I thought.
Like 8 2-hour episodes, basically, because that, like, God, I remember binge watching that and like starting at like 8 o'clock in the morning and finishing at almost midnight, I think it was. Probably about torturing myself. How many times can I listen to the one guy who's like in the show Coach and does the voice of Patrick and SpongeBob? I can only say SUME some or something like that. I can't remember.
Now, Josh, with it, there is one aspect I do disagree with you on.
Okay.
With the spouses, both Beverly's and Bill's, I always thought that added, with Bill's wife, it added a bit of consequences, kind of an escalation. Because previously it seemed like what was it? Richie was always like, we should just get out of town. But once Pennywise had his wife, like that was not an option. And with Beverly's husband, as scary as a clown is, a crazy person possessed by him with a knife, that's pretty scary as well.
But we kind of get that with Henry Bowers, though.
Exactly. Hey, more Henry Bowers is also a scarier thing as well.
Yeah, especially
I still can't believe how he survived that in the first place, but he did. Because in the first part when they're all kids, he falls down that canyon. There's no reasonable way he should have survived that, but he did. I think too. So in chapter 2, you got a point there, but I just always found it when I remember watching that in the miniseries. I thought, why we really don't care about this guy's wife? We really don't. We only seen her for 5 minutes earlier. That's just for me anyway. I would have. You kind of get the stakes raised, at least in the chapter 2 when they introduced that one kid, and this was another really good scene, the funhouse scene, where he's trying to rescue that kid, and Pennywise gets him, and he's banging his head on there and licking the glass, which is something my dogs do. They went out, but that was a pretty graphic scene. But I get your point there. I mean, you're not wrong. It was just my preference. I just kind of like the fact that they left them out, but just so we could focus more on the other parts of the story.
It's kind of like Godzilla movies with the humans. There are times where it really slows it down, but there are some instances where it's just ridiculous. There was an old school one where they hired a company hired a manga artist, and then a bunch of eco-terrorists were like, no, we think they're doing something evil. You got to use your axes to get us in. It almost felt like a separate movie, but it was just so fun to see it all mixed together. So it really depends on how well you do it.
Yeah, that's true there. I think they did. I think when it probably is done better in the book in that regards. But maybe movie-wise, maybe it doesn't work as much in the movie, but it does work probably better in the book. I'll concede that. Because, you probably are wondering what the hell happened to those people, what happened to Bill's wife, and what happened to Beverly's abusive husband.
One thing in the book, Bill and Beverly in their adult lives they wind up in bed together. So I'm glad they kind of left that out too, in a way.
Yeah, of course, that would have complicated even more with his wife coming in. Like, oops.
Exactly.
But of course, we're all, yeah, you're probably right, because secretly, whether you're reading the book or you're watching the miniseries or the movie, you're kind of rooting for Bev to get with Ben. Really, you know, kind of rooting for him a little bit, because why not? Well, especially in the miniseries, because it's John Ritter. So why not? Of course, you can't root against John Ritter. It's against the law, I think, in some states.
Even in Bad Santa, you can't root against him.
No. So, was that his last performance, too, I think?
That was, yes.
In the book, did they mention that, what was it, Richie? Yeah, did they mention that Richie was gay in the book?
That's something I need to read back, because that's obviously they don't touch on that in the miniseries. They do, obviously, they certainly insinuate it in the in the second part of the movie.
I had no idea. I was like,
it wouldn't surprise me. It's something to go back. I mean, like you said, he's obviously that type of bigotry Stephen King had already tackled in the book, so it wouldn't have surprised me if he did. So maybe someone that's watching this that has a better memory than any of us can let us know.
I thought it was
even
sweet.
in the comments, folks. In the comments section below. So I wonder what they'll do with this mini series. That's supposed, like we were talking about, this Welcome to Derry. I mean, wonder how that's going to turn out. I guess it's obviously supposed to take place before the It story. So since we know that Pennywise or It has been in Derry for however how many centuries, really, since the town started, I guess there's so many different side stories you can go with that.
You think it'll be in like the 20s or 30s before the 50s?
Oh, that would be cool.
That's what I'm thinking. I would think they would go back. Maybe they'll even go back to the very beginning, because there was that mention about the Native American tribe that tried to get rid of them. So I wonder if they'll do that story. So I guess there are a lot of different stories you could go with it. I know there's the story of I think it was like the Easter Day Massacre or whatever.
Yep. And then the Iron, what did they call it? The Iron
Factory or whatever that blew up.
Thank you. Yep. That would be cool. I mean, just one section. I mean, one episode could be 1920s, one could be another one, and just so on and so forth. Kind of. I don't know.
Yeah, and depending on how long each episodes, they're just like 45 minutes to an hour long, then maybe you do 2 episodes of this time period, then 2 for this one, because he, of course, comes out every 27 years. So yeah, you could do a lot with that. Now I'm thinking about it, because at first I was a little bit hesitant. Do we really need this? But then I thought about, well, there's plenty of story, and maybe they can finally introduce the intergalactic turtle finally in the story.
Yes.
Because I'm still confused by that thing. Like, what's with the turtle?
We live on the turtle. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
He had a bad case of indigestion and belched out the universe. I think that's the story to it, if I'm not mistaken. And he's mortal enemies with Pennywise.
What was it? Pennywise. I keep forgetting. Is Pennywise the Man in Black or the brother to the Man in Black from the Dark Tower? Because they're related. I know that for sure, but I don't know if they're the same.
Yeah, I'm not real sure.
Me neither.
Yeah,
I guess we'll have to research that for the next Stephen King episode we have and look into that a little bit further.
We need an expert on the Dark Tower.
We certainly do. Well, one of the guys that was going to be here tonight was going to do the Dark Tower as well. So maybe if we get him on in August, we can go into that more. But yeah, well, let's see what else is there. I think we got most of it. So yeah, now I'm blanking. No, but anyhow, yeah, I think it is one of the best. Certainly, Chapter One, I think, is definitely the best movies of that decade as far as horror movies go, and certainly made the studio a lot of money. What did you guys think of the casting that they did with the adults? Seemed like they kind of hit that out of the ballpark on every single one of them.
Oh God, yeah.
I have one objection to that.
Okay.
Jessica Chastain, great actress. Like nothing against what she did, but the younger actress looks so much more like Amy Adams than she does Jessica Chastain.
I know a lot of people were talking about maybe Amy Adams would get that. I'm not familiar enough with her. Well, the one time I seen Amy Adams, I didn't like her character, and that was in the Man of Steel movie. But I'm sure she's a better actress than that. It was just a bad script. But yeah, I mean, I thought Chastain did okay in that role. You could be right. Maybe maybe Amy Adams would have done better with that.
Nothing negative. I'm just saying, maybe I would have loved to see what she would have brought to it, because like I've seen a lot of her movies, and she is very talented.
Mm-hmm. That I agree with, and that's who I thought they were going to go with. And then when I saw Jessica, I was like, okay.
I think what it was with her, she had previously done a movie with the director and writer, because it's Andy and Barbara Muschietti, who like the brother sister. We just talked about brothers and sisters earlier in Silver Bullet, but you know, he's like the director, she's the producer, and I think she had been in one of their previous movies, and I think that's kind of how she got that part, because it's someone that they had worked with, which isn't uncommon because how many times John Carpenter or whomever brought the same actors back for another movie that they're doing.
Very true.
But yeah. Well, I think that's it for this evening. If we did not talk about your favorite Stephen King adaptation, trust me, we will get to it in a future episode, because we can definitely do 2 or 3 of these Stephen King episodes here in the future. So we'll certainly get to it, because we didn't even touch on other popular Stephen King titles like The Shining or Cujo or Pet Cemetery or Carrie. So I'm sure we'll get to those in the future. So until then, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks, Alistair. Thanks, Lucy, for coming in tonight for tonight's episode. Great to have you two on. So
thank you for having me.
Yep. Thanks for having me too.
Yep. And we will see you guys on the next episode.